Good morning. Welcome to the Economic Development and Equity Subcommittee. Today is October 27th, 2021. Do we have any call to the public?
No, we do not.
Maybe going off script too. Or actually, I'm going to call the meeting to order. No call to the public. And then minutes of the meeting. Do I have a motion for minutes of the meeting?
So moved.
Second. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Sorry, I'm a little off today. We have consent action. We have Tourism Hospitality Advisory Board funding and 2021-22 Home Investment Partnership Program call for interest. Anybody need to talk about anything on consent?
No, ma'am.
Okay, we have a motion?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, now we have information and discussion. Key Phoenix Economic Indicators Quarterly Report.
Madam Chair and subcommittee members, our first item for discussion today is, as you said, Chairwoman, Key Phoenix Economic Indicators Quarterly Report. Here today to give the presentation is Budget and Research Director Amber Williamson. Amber?
Thank you, Ginger. Good morning, Councilwoman Pastor, members of the subcommittee. Today I'll be covering the fourth quarter 2021 Phoenix Economic Indicators Report. So the report that's included in your packet includes 18 key economic indicators that my staff uses to assist with revenue forecasting and to provide the subcommittee with an overall sense of the strength and health of the Phoenix economy. Indicators presented provide current year-to-date, prior year-to-date, prior three-year average of year-to-date, and peak year data. Measures are done on a monthly basis for the most part, with a few available either quarterly or annually. Indicators cover passenger activity levels at Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport, utility accounts, new construction permit activity, information on state and local and vehicle license taxes, property values, as well as 3 employment statistics. In respect for time, I won't cover all 18 indicators. As I mentioned, those are included in your report. I'm going to cover 8, and we'll start with Phoenix Sky Harbor passenger activity. Each graph provides in the blue line the current year-to-date, the red line is prior year-to-date, green line is 3-year average year-to-date, and the purple line represents peak year data. We know that passenger activity levels at the airport were negatively impacted by COVID-19, particularly during the stay-at-home order and economic shutdown. Through June, they experienced a decrease of 22.9% as compared with the previous year and 35.5% lower than the 3-year average. However, information I received from staff just recently indicated those activity levels are returning to pre-pandemic levels and are anticipated to continue to grow. The next indicator I'll cover is total new home construction permits issued. Through June, 14% growth in 2021 over the prior year. You can see that as represented by the blue line, and 16% growth in 21 over the 3-year average. As you can see, we're still quite a bit off from that peak year, but staff from Planning and Development is anticipating to experience continued growth, primarily due to increases in population. The next indicator I'll cover is total city sales tax. City sales tax do represent a large component of both general fund revenues as well as revenues for special revenue funds. COVID-19 did negatively impact certain sales tax activities that you would expect, such as hotel, motel, restaurants and bars, and amusements. But overall, city sales tax growth has been positive, as represented by the blue line, and it does represent for last year a peak year. This was offset mostly by retail and contracting categories, which helped kind of cover those negative growth rates we saw in the leisure and hospitality categories. Next, total city retail sales tax. This does represent our largest tax base of collections. We have seen positive growth throughout COVID-19. We believe that's primarily due to shifts in consumer spending to taxable goods away from services that are not taxed, as well as just general overall growth in the Phoenix economy. Phoenix has been a leader coming out of the recession. We anticipate that's going to continue. We do want to mention, however, that a lot of this we believe to be impacted by the federal one-time stimulus aid packages that were provided through the CARES and ARPA Acts. As I indicated back on September 21st to the full council, information we received from the state's Finance Advisory Committee indicated that $60 billion was infused into the state and local economy, and it did what it was intended to do to prevent a severe economic decline for the state and the city. However, as that one-time federal aid starts to diminish, we do anticipate we'll see slowing growth rates in retail. However, because Phoenix is doing so well overall, I anticipate we'll continue to see positive growth rates in retail. Growth also accounts for additional retail sales tax that has been collected from online retailers. This became effective in October of 2019, just before the pandemic started. Next is total hotel motel sales tax. As I indicated, this was one of those categories that was most negatively impacted. As you can see, that blue line representing growth through June 30th of 21, far below both the prior year as well as the 3-year average, and also way off from that peak year. Good news there, though, is through 3 months of revenue collections, we are starting to see positive growth, and I anticipate that will continue. Total contracting sales tax, current year to date through June, was close to the peak year in 06-07. Growth in construction activity is expected to continue for the foreseeable future. We do see positive growth rates so far as well year to date, which is good news. Next indicator is one of those employment statistics. This is Phoenix median household income. This information comes from the U.S. Census Bureau's American Community Survey. The most recent ACS was conducted in 2019. As you can see, based on that, we have improved over the last 3 years from a median income perspective, getting close to that peak year in 2008. The next ACS is expected to be published in January of 22. It was delayed by the COVID-19 pandemic, so we will update this indicator in a future economic indicators report. And then the last indicator I'll cover in the presentation today is the Phoenix unemployment rate. So 2020 unemployment on a calendar year basis reflects the nationwide impacts of COVID-19. You can see it was right around 8%. This information, by the way, comes from the U.S. Department of Labor's Bureau of Labor Statistics. However, significantly still below the peak year as a result of the Great Recession, which was just under 11%. I can tell you I checked the BLS site as of their October update. The Phoenix unemployment rate has now come down to roughly 5.2%. It's trailing or leading just ahead of the U.S. unemployment rate, which is 5.3, and then trailing just behind that is Arizona at 5.4%. And that concludes my presentation, and I can answer any questions on the report.
Does anyone have any questions?
Just a quick question.
Councilwoman Stark?
I know that a lot of businesses are having a hard time hiring. Is that going to have any impact on our numbers with regards to unemployment? It seems like everywhere I go, I see a hiring sign.
Right. Councilwoman Stark, members of the subcommittee, that's an excellent question. If you follow the news and the economy, you're hearing about challenges with hiring. So the labor participation rate is not back to pre-pandemic levels. So while the unemployment rate's coming down, there are struggles with finding individuals to fill positions. And there could be a number of reasons for that. I think Phoenix, however, is in a better position than many other cities. So I'm hoping that over the next several months that'll start to work its way out. But it's definitely a challenge, particularly for many sectors like the hospitality industry, manufacturing, even local government. So we'll be tracking that closely. That's one of those indicators that's included in your report. But yeah, it's a very good point.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilwoman O'Brien?
Thank you so much, Chairwoman. Amber, can you just explain a little bit about the difference between labor participation and unemployment rate? I think that it's important for folks to understand why those would be different.
Right. So unemployment basically represents the number of essentially jobs that are basically individuals who are actively seeking work and unable to find work, where the labor participation rate includes those who are in the labor force who haven't exited it. So there are some individuals who simply stop looking for work, and that's the labor participation rate. The unemployment rate represents those number of individuals who can't find work, so to speak.
And so I realize maybe not your area of expertise, but do we have some ideas about why folks are not reentering the labor force after COVID?
Very good question as well, and I am not an economist by trade, and I will admit that. I mean, I have some theories about that from what I've read. I think some of it obviously was influenced by the pandemic. I think when individuals were either laid off, they maybe thought to go back to school, they're changing their career path, they're looking for different opportunities. Also, that federal stimulus aid also has, I think, allowed people to not enter back into the labor force. So there could be a number of reasons, and I think a lot of it is sector specific. A lot of people also, I don't think, want to physically come back into work. They might also be hesitant to go back into sectors where there were significant layoffs, like the hospitality industry. So they may just be looking either for different work, or they've just simply decided to retire or relying on other means in order to provide for their income.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you. Amber, could it also be the type of work that, and the strenuousness, the type of physicalness that people in those essential jobs are experiencing, and also the pay?
Potentially.
Realizing during the pandemic the dynamics of it.
Absolutely.
And the lack of pay.
Right. That's a good point. Councilwoman Pastor, members of the subcommittee. Yeah, I think there can be a lot of theories as to why individuals may not be wanting to enter back into the labor force. It's either working conditions, it's rate of pay, they don't have the skill set. Some of the sectors, I think, are changing in terms of what they're looking for from employees. So it's hard to really, determine exactly what that reason is. However, it's not marginally off. So even if you look at the labor participation indicator in the report, we're not back to pre-pandemic levels, but it's not significantly off. So like I indicated, my hope is that over the next 6 to 12 months, as we start hopefully exiting out of the pandemic, you might see individuals participating more in the labor force, which would then match up those open available jobs, which has caused the unemployment rate to come down, to start to fill those.
Go ahead, Councilwoman O'Brien.
Thank you. I'm just curious, do we have any indicators about there being more or less jobs available than prior to the pandemic, or is that an indicator that's ever been tracked by the city?
I'm sorry, Councilwoman O'Brien, members of the subcommittee, I'm not clear on what you're asking.
How many jobs are available in the city?
Right. So, well, I can speak to information we received out of the U of A that talks about that we have returned to pre-pandemic levels in terms of the number of jobs available, recovering the number of jobs. I think it's roughly around 60,000 or something for the city of Phoenix. I can get that information to you, though, shortly.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Councilwoman Stark, do you have a question? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Amber. I wanted Amber to do a presentation so that it's always on our agenda, but I actually wanted her to do a presentation for all of us to see where we are, how we're moving, and what our future will look like. So thank you, Amber, for doing that.
You're welcome.
Our next item is downtown kiosk.
Chairwoman and subcommittee members, our next item is Downtown Kiosk, and for this presentation we have Brianna Velez, who is our Assistant Street Transportation Director, and Chris Yule, who's our Deputy Street Transportation Director. And Chairwoman, I just want to say, as they're getting set up here, thank you for highlighting the key economic indicators and having that discussion today.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of this subcommittee. We are here today to share information about a potential program for our downtown area, specifically the installation of interactive digital kiosks. This item is for information and discussion with no action at this time, as we are just requesting input and feedback from the subcommittee members as to whether staff should move forward with the development and implementation of this program. I should note that we have provided a similar presentation to the Transportation Infrastructure and Planning Subcommittee earlier this month. Kiosks in the downtown area are not a new concept. The downtown area had kiosks for a number of years. Those were managed by Downtown Phoenix, Inc., or DPI. The information was not dynamic and easily changeable. Once the kiosks approached the end of their useful life, they were removed. In early 2020, prior to the pandemic, we were approached by DPI representatives to discuss the possibility of moving forward with a program to install digital interactive kiosks in the downtown area. The intent really was to provide a better experience for people in the downtown area, including workers, residents, and of course our visitors. Just to note that this slide includes a map showing the locations of the kiosks that were previously installed. Since the static kiosks were removed, even before our most recent conversations with DPI, there have been conversations over the years about the digital kiosk concept. We know that there are a number of reasons why the city has not moved forward with this program in the past, and we will cover a number of those in our presentation. But to quickly summarize, some of these issues include ownership and control of the kiosks, capabilities and amenities of the kiosks, that these kiosks are located in public right-of-way and not on city property or private property, cost of these kiosks and who bears that responsibility. The advertising component is key to the kiosk program, the treatment of revenues generated by the kiosks, as well as maintenance and durability of electronic kiosks in Phoenix's climate. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris Yule, who's going to take us through majority of the presentation.
Thank you, Brianna. Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, we have been researching how Valley cities and cities in other states have been utilizing digital kiosks. Tempe was the first Arizona to install digital kiosks and did so in early 2020. Some key features just to note is that majority of the kiosks that we've seen do include free Wi-Fi to the public. In Tempe, the kiosks are owned by the kiosk vendor, and they're operated by the Downtown Tempe Authority. Mesa started installing its kiosks in early 2021. They do provide real-time transit information, and the kiosks were given to Mesa, and they are operated in conjunction with their Downtown Mesa Association. In Dallas, they have over 300 locations with kiosks, focused mostly on transit locations. They do have the free Wi-Fi, and kiosks are owned by the kiosk vendor, and they are operated by the City of Dallas. Kiosks can provide information on just about anything that you desire. They can be targeted to residents and workers and visitors for things like things to eat, events that are going on in the area, and activities to do within the local or regional area. They also can direct you to social services, civic resources, which is critical in an area like downtown Phoenix with all the layers of government, as well as just the ability to possibly explore the area. Here is an example of what an interactive kiosk in Phoenix could look like. It includes a modern design which can be adapted to the city's needs, an option for shade features to improve viewing of the screen, and allows easy access and user interface. In addition, key features that must be included in all kiosks are ADA accessibility, as well as the ability to translate information into multiple languages. And just good to note that advertising does show when the kiosks are not in use. Kiosks are located within the public right-of-way, and revenue is generated through advertising. This revenue is shared through different models, and is traditionally shared through the city, either through a percentage of gross or net revenues. The model can also include a guaranteed minimum revenue to the city. Revenues to the City of Phoenix would first be used to cover the costs of implementing and managing the program. If this is something we move forward with, there are some key considerations. Phoenix City Code will have to be modified to allow kiosks in the right-of-way, as advertising is not currently allowed by City Code. It would also be critical for any advertising to be consistent with the city-approved advertising standards. Another key consideration is program costs. Who pays for the costs of the kiosks, the ongoing operation and maintenance costs, technology upgrades, and addressing vandalism, etc. The program would, at a minimum, provide guaranteed revenue to the city that will cover the cost or exceed the costs of the program, or we would not move forward with the program. As noted, these kiosks are installed in the public right-of-way and cannot interfere with the function of the right-of-way, including pedestrian movement and general public safety. Finally, ownership is a key aspect. Are kiosks owned by the vendor or owned by the city? Who controls the content? These are all important questions and considerations that will be explored in a request for information issued to the vendors. And I'll turn it back over to Brianna to close out the presentation.
Thank you, Chris. So if staff were to move forward with a program to implement interactive digital kiosks in the downtown area, there are a few things we have quickly recognized. First, selection of a vendor or provider of the kiosk would need to be an open, competitive process to ensure that the city gets the best vendor, the product it wants, as well as the best terms. Second, staff would need to learn more about kiosks. This would be new to Phoenix, and we would want to make sure we are knowledgeable as possible about them moving forward. So we would initially issue a request for information to survey the industries to get answers to some of our questions. Third, based on the responses from the industry, input from our stakeholders, including DPI, and of course our own collective city input, we would then develop a request for proposal document that would assist us in making the best decision on the implementation of these kiosks. In our presentation to the TIP subcommittee, there were questions concerning schedule for this process. So in response, we have developed this schedule to provide a tentative timeline for how this process could play out. So we would anticipate shortly issuing a request for information to the kiosk industry, with the idea that by December 2021 or early 2022, we would issue a request for proposals. We would have those proposals due back to the city by February 2022, with the intent to have this contract approved by City Council prior to summer recess of 2022. And we would want these downtown kiosks to be operational by January 2023, just in time for the next Super Bowl in Arizona. We also heard an interest in potentially expanding these kiosks outside of the downtown area to other areas in the city. This is something that we definitely feel we could incorporate into a procurement document to allow for a phased expansion of kiosk locations as desired or warranted. So this concludes our presentation, and now we would love to hear your individual and collective feedback about the concept of interactive digital kiosks in the downtown area.
Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah.
I do.
We've already seen it, the
No, I know.
presentation.
I have questions.
Okay.
In the RFI, I would like to include data monitoring, or how we are going to share data, not personal data, but I want to know how effective the kiosk is, if it is effective or it's not effective. How many likes or touch points. So, and I probably could go further, but I would like to see that incorporated. The other piece is you mentioned other areas. What other areas is being proposed?
So I think at this time, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee, first on the data monitoring, the data sharing and the touch points, we absolutely can make sure as we work towards issuing that request for information that we talk to the vendors and get information back on what opportunities there are for that. So we will definitely ensure that happens. As far as potential expansion, I mean, we are open to what City Council feels where it makes sense, right? I mean, I think what we've seen is that public transit areas in other cities are areas that we have seen them operating. Right now, obviously, we are starting with the downtown area, but definitely open to further conversations about possible expansion areas and what you guys think makes sense for our city.
Okay. I had one more. Oh, since we're at least trying to get out of a pandemic, or we experience a pandemic, how are those machines going to be cleaned? Since I'm touching it, or I could be sneezing, or I could have something, and I go and touch the kiosk, and then I walk away, leaving my germs. How is that going to be monitored? Or are we going to have hand sanitizer somewhere near there? Or I'm just curious.
Madam Chair, that is a great question. I will tell you, I think that's something that we will make sure we ask and that will come out of the RFI. I'm unsure if these digital kiosks, very similarly to some of how we've modified our elevators where there's self-cleaning buttons and things like that. I don't know if that is an opportunity there that exists today or not, but I definitely think that is a great point, and we will make sure we get that addressed as part of the RFI process.
Yeah, I'm just thinking these go up 2023, Super Bowl, masses of people touching the items. But that's just me, just trying to be proactive.
Absolutely, we appreciate that feedback.
All right, thank you for the presentation. Does anybody else have any questions? Nope, okay,
Thank you.
thank you. I believe I have partial release of conservation easement.
Chairwoman Pastor and subcommittee members, our last...
Yeah, I thought this one was off, never mind, it's
Okay.
not.
All righty, our last item for today is an action item requesting subcommittee authorization to release items from a recorded conservation easement at a property located in the Willow Historic District to allow an addition at the rear of the house. And with us today for this presentation, we have Alan Stevenson, our Planning and Development Director, and Kevin Waite, who's a Principal Planner in the Planning and Development Department. Alan?
Thank you, Ginger. Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. As Ms. Spencer noted, I do have Kevin Waite with me, who's the Principal Planner that is a supervisor for all of our Historic Preservation Office. This is a relatively straightforward matter, so I will let him explain all the details, and then we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chairwoman Pastor, members of the subcommittee. It's good to be here with you today. So yes, we are at 306 West Almeria Road in the Willow Historic District. And this is an adobe home that was constructed between 1936 and 1937. And in March of 2019, the City Council approved a $10,000 historic preservation grant to help rehabilitate the historic property. And in exchange for the grant funds, the city received a 15-year conservation easement on this property, which is essentially a second layer of protection for the property above and beyond the standard historic designation. The work that was funded included stucco repair and painting, a new roof with dimensional shingles, and repair of exterior wood features. The conservation easement that the city received lasts through 2034, and it does run with the land. Well, in 2020, the property was sold to new property owners, Jason and Jessica Blades. They purchased the property and now wish to construct an addition at the rear. It's a small home, and their family's growing, so it's natural that they would want to expand. So to facilitate the new addition, an existing Arizona room at the rear of the house would be demolished, along with a metal carport that connects the house to the detached garage. And the addition would also require removal of a small section of the original rear wall and 3 original steel casement windows. So why are we bringing this to the City Council? We've been advised by the Law Department that any structures that are demolished on properties with conservation easements need to have City Council approval. Specifically, the structures that are proposed for demolition need to be released from the terms of the conservation easement, and so that's why we're here today. The bottom line is that neither the Arizona room nor the carport that are proposed for demolition have any historic value. They were built much later than the rest of the house and are not within the historic period of significance. Removal of a small portion of the rear wall is actually in keeping with the Historic Preservation Commission's design standards, as long as the majority of the rear wall remains intact. So on the plan that's presented, it's just a small corner, the northeast corner of the house, where the original wall would be removed to facilitate the new addition, which again meets the historic preservation standard. And the owners have agreed to incorporate the removed steel casement windows into the proposed addition. So we're pleased that those windows that were part of that grant funding will be retained and kept on site. So the Historic Preservation Commission heard this item and they recommended City Council authorization to release the Arizona room, carport, and the small section of the rear wall from the conservation easement on the property. This recommendation is subject to the stipulation that the 3 steel casement windows impacted by the new addition be retained and reutilized in the new addition. And they approved this by a 7-0 vote on October 18th. And so our recommendation as staff is for council authorization to release these items, again, the Arizona room, the metal carport, small section of the rear wall, from the conservation easement on the property at 306 West Almeria Road, again, subject to the stipulation that the 3 steel casement windows impacted by the new addition be retained and reused in the new addition. I will mention that there have been a couple of requests that we brought forward in the past where historic structures were being demolished, and we recommended some additional mitigation in those cases. In this case, because the structures that are being demolished are not considered historic, staff does not feel that any additional mitigation is required. We're simply recommending approval. And that concludes the staff recommendation.
Councilwoman Stark.
I just have a quick question. What happens if the casement windows are damaged during the demolition? What would happen? They couldn't comply with the stipulation.
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Stark, that's a good question. We would have to cross that bridge if we came to it, but
okay.
In that case, we might be back to asking for some measure of mitigation if, in fact, the terms cannot be met. But we've worked in these cases before, and it's been fairly successful, so hopefully.
Okay, thank you.
If that happens, Councilwoman Stark, I have some of that era. So,
Madam Chair, Councilman Stark, I would note that the windows were relatively recent additions as part of the grant, and so they're in fairly good shape, hopefully. So they're not historic ones from 100 years ago that are going to have problems. So hopefully they won't have any issues.
Great, good to hear.
oh, I have the original, Alan.
Yes, those are the ones that are much harder and to not fall apart when demoing things and taking them out.
Exactly. All right, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second.
Chairwoman, I'm sorry to interrupt. We do have 2 speakers on the line for this item.
I forgot. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so our first speaker is Jason Blades. Jason, are you on the line?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Please proceed.
Yeah, I actually have no further comments. I think Kevin did a beautiful job explaining what our intent is as homeowners, and so I have no further comments.
Okay. Thank you, Jason. And our next speaker is Michael Gilson. Michael, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Please proceed.
Yeah, and I also have no comments. I'm the designer, so I was just seeing if anybody had any technical questions concerning the project. But if there are none, I have nothing further to add.
I have one question. The rear wall, even though it's a historic home, my understanding is that in the back, we're, as historic homeowners, we're able to do modifications of the back area. So could you give me clarity on the rear wall?
Yes, Madam Chair. We do encourage preservation of as much of the original structure as possible. And so, rather than demolish the entire rear wall or rear section of the house, we encourage people only demolish as much of the rear as you need to facilitate the new addition. And that's exactly the approach that the Blades have taken in this case. And so, therefore, it does follow the preservation standard.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the clarity, because I always knew people will say, we can do anything in the back. So that's why I wanted some clarity. But they also have, but they also have a beautiful wall too, so. So, ready to go? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Now we have a beautiful backyard. I believe I'm on to, is there any call to the public?
Madam Chair and subcommittee members, we have no calls to the public.
Okay, future items. Who would like some future items?
Madam Chair, I just have a question on item number 3, Housing Department to serve as Pride's fiscal agent. When will we hear that item? I'm just curious.
Where are you? I don't see that.
I've got the sheet with the presenters, and in the back there are 5 items, and number 3 is Housing Department to serve as Pride's fiscal agent to be announced. So I was just curious when that might be coming.
I'm sorry, Councilwoman Stark, I don't have that.
Oh.
I'm in the back. The back of the packet?
You know how we get the sheet that shows all the presenters on it? This sheet? So in the back there's 5 future items.
Okay, the future items I have is disposition of city-owned former First National Bank legislative agenda. What number housing? Phoenix
Yes,
plan?
that one. I'm just curious when that might come to us.
Okay. I thought you said pride, and I was like, pride? I'm sorry, I heard pride. And then I thought of the Pride Parade, and then I thought about the Pride neighborhood, and I was like, I don't know what she's talking about. We can bring it up. That could be in the next November meeting. You want that?
Yeah, I'd love to hear about it.
Anything else? I would like to see the downtown building signage study. Councilwoman O'Brien?
I'm good with what you guys have asked for. I don't have any additional requests.
And then item 1. I think these already are future agenda items, right, Ginger?
Chairwoman and subcommittee members, yes, these are items that are listed for future that can come forward in November, December, or future meetings. So right now for November, we have the disposition of the former First National Bank item coming for November, possibly a legislative agenda that might be moved to December. And then we can bring the downtown building signage study forward in November. I'll follow up with staff on the timing of that. And then the Housing Department to serve as Pride's fiscal agent. I just wanted to confirm with Councilwoman Stark if she's talking about the Pride fiscal agent or if she is referring to the home investment partnerships, that CFI.
No, the Pride's fiscal agent.
Okay, we can follow up with staff to bring that forward.
Ginger, where are you seeing that?
Yes, so I had to pull a different document. So this would be the yellow sheets that normally go out for all the subcommittees. And I flipped to the EDE, and it is listed on that one. So sorry for the confusion today between the 2 future agenda items list.
Okay, that's why I'm all confused.
Yes.
I guess I don't have the updated one, because on 5 I have Housing Phoenix Plan Update. Is that all part of it?
So that is also listed on the future agenda items that we had for today. We'll pull that up on the screen as an item. That can come forward in the future as well. And then we also had the city-owned land in Linwood neighborhood for the housing department item.
So whatever we, Councilwoman Stark would like to place on there, that's fine.
Okay. Alrighty. So right now.
That's the one I have.
Yes. Yeah. That's the one I have as well. So we'll figure out the confusion on this piece. But I'll confirm for November we have First National Bank of Arizona, the disposition of that. We have the downtown building signage study. We'll have the city-owned land in Linwood neighborhood. We'll confirm that. And then the housing department to serve as Pride's fiscal agent. And that's what we'll
and Chairwoman, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Councilwoman.
If it's possible to hear the legislative agenda in November, if they're ready, that would be awesome, just to have a little bit of time before before the state legislature goes into session in January. That would be, I think, advantageous.
Okay. Sure. And then in there, and when we look at the agenda, we'll just see the timing to make sure we time it right.
And if it's not, I certainly.
Yeah, that's no problem. Okay.
Chairwoman.
Thank you.
Chairman
Yes.
Pastor, may I also remind the public that our November meeting was actually moved to November 16th
Okay.
due to
Perfect.
the conflict with the holidays.
Holiday. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.